Hey, what's going on guys? Zedd here, bringing you another Soul Calibur 6 video. In today's video, I'm just going to share my first impressions and thoughts of Hwang, the newest character, the last character of Season 2 of Soul Calibur 6. Currently, the game is on patch 2.31, which is a very small patch just after Hwang's release. So it's still fairly early. He hasn't had any balance changes yet that are meaningful. So things might get buffed, things might get nerfed, we don't know yet. And keep in mind too, he only came out, what, a week or two ago at the time of this video, so it's still very early impressions. I could be wrong on some things for sure, but I feel like I've got a decent enough grasp of this character, having spent most of my time in the lab labbing him, as there's a lot to go over, which we'll get into. And having fought fairly good Hwang players who have been Hwang mains and have been waiting for this character for years, as he wasn't in, no version of him was in Soul Calibur 4 or 5, and not 6 either until now. So just to be clear, this isn't like a Hwang guide. I will not claim to be an expert on the character, so I'm not going to act like I am. But I'm just going to give you some impressions, strengths, weaknesses, things to consider, and what I think about him going forward and where he is excuse me, in my tier list, etc, etc. So let's get right into it. Let's not waste too much time. So Hwang is a sort of a mid-range character who has very good whiff punishment and amazing buttons and space control. And what I mean by that is think sort of Cervantes or Zaslamel in terms of they have moves to control every space on the screen. He has serviceable pokes. His punishment is fairly good. It's above average at least. His combo damage is not great unless he commits talismans, which is his passive. His frames on hit aren't that great, so you don't really need to respect Hwang when you get hit. Not really. There's a couple of key moves, but for the most part, you can challenge Hwang. He's very much a hit and go or look for your whip punish character. Like I said, think very Cervantes-esque in terms of how he is piloted in the neutral game. With a little more speed and safety than a character like Cervantes, but we'll get into those pieces first. So first up, regarding his passives, he has two. What I think about the auras, I think they're really neat, but it does feel a little tacked on to me. And what I mean by that is, I find them very lazy. I think it's very, for lack of a better word, I find it very unfair that a character like this gets free bonuses just cause reasons, just cause he's DLC, basically, when other characters don't get shit. And it's not like he has an inherent weakness for using these. It only costs him one talisman, which doesn't mean anything to this character at all. So I think they're a little lazy in terms of their design. I think that it's unfair. I don't think it's broken. Don't misunderstand unfair for broken. But I think it's really lazy, as I've already said a bunch of times. And I kind of wish this wasn't a thing, because it gives him just this inherent advantage and access to different lethal hits and counter tools that no other character has access to just on the fly like that. And not to mention that the move to actually go into talismans, frankly, it recovers quite quickly, but you can even cancel it. So you can kind of tier a taunt, right? Get the life lead, run away, get a quick aura, and you're good to go. So I don't like this at all. I wish this wasn't a thing. It feels like an unnecessary buff or an unnecessary benefit to a character who frankly doesn't need it. Whatever. That might be I might be the only one with that opinion, but I don't really like the passive aura system. On the flip side, I do like the life force system, the other one, which is the yin yang symbol right beside the aura emblem that you can see 43210. It goes all the way down to -9. This is interesting because when he's negative, he reduces health for the next round, but he gains 3 talismans each round, and he gains them very little in other ways. And when he's in positive talismans going into the next round, he gains extra meter. So again, these passives are like, other characters don't just get extra meter for existing. So I'm a little pessimistic towards these passives. This feels like a DLC privilege, to be quite honest with you. I see what they were going for, but it feels like a privilege. The only way that the life force is, I guess, fair is the fact that he gains very little damage without them, like very little damage in his combos. And so he does have to expel them, but realistically this character can play a very slow game and still come out on top. And you can stay in the positive life force for most rounds if you want. And so I find that a little irritating personally, but it's cool, but it's irritating. So you can see here, I'll just do like a basic bread and butter. I'm no Hwang expert. There might be something better, but you can see I have to expel a talisman to get, you know, any meaningful damage as I drop the combo, of course, right? Right, so 59 into Oki, but it cost me 1 talisman. Generally, if you expel 2 talismans, you're getting very minimal return on those combos for the most part. So it is what it is. I wanted to spend a bit of time on the passages just talking about my thoughts on them because I feel like no one's really talking about them. And I may be the only one with a pessimistic approach to them. So that's my thoughts on the passive. Now we can sort of move on at a bit of a quicker pace. Okay, so regarding his good buttons, he has a ton of mid attacks. Holy moly, this is the king of mids. Whether it's horizontal or vertical, it doesn't matter. They're fairly good. The only thing that Hwang has to keep an eye out for is he's either fairly safe, but slow, or he's generally minus 12, or around there, minus 10, minus 14. On the really good moves. So for example, this is a Hori mid. It's very fast, but it is minus 12. Okay, this 3A is incredibly good. The reason why it's so good is it's a 2-hit and it's safe. The only thing to keep in mind with this move going forward is understand that the first hit does lack range. So once people get a little more accustomed to this move, either A, don't be surprised to not see it used other than up close step capture, or B, because this is one input, people might get competent at GIing the second hit if you whiff the first one. So you might see that going forward a couple months from now, or when players get more experience with the character. So it moves like this. He has lots of moves like this, so I'm just using this as my example, but holy man, he actually has the largest moves list in the game regarding strings, stances, the whole bit. So he has a lot of moves that can kind of do the same thing, and I like that, but I don't. It makes it seem like it's a little scattered, a little rushed, but at the same time, it allows for a lot of creativity and personalization in your gameplay, and I think that that's really awesome. Regarding his verticals, they're fairly good. His 4B in particular is good. It is an I-14 fairly long range poke, which you can see here. It does have a couple different follow-ups. You can do the B here, which is steppable up close or GI-able otherwise on block. Fairly good damage. The A is minus 10 on block with no charge. With charge, it is safe. I'm pretty sure it's 0, actually. His low pokes are a bit of a point of contention for me. I actually think his lows are trash. Let me explain. Because right now I'm seeing people get away with murder with this character's lows. Let's talk about them. 1A is Mitsurugi's 1A. It is just 2 frames better in terms of its block, and it doesn't have a lethal hit. By 2 frames better, I mean this, if memory serves, is an I-32 or I-34 low, so it's actually a lot slower than it may seem at first glance. And so the reason why this low is hitting a lot of people, in my opinion, it's a new character, we're getting used to it, right? So it's only going to be a matter of time before we block this or jump it on reaction, GI, etc. So not a great low. It still has its place. It's a tech crouch, so it definitely will still be used, but you cannot just use this as your go-to low. It won't happen. His 1K, base 1K, is fairly standard. Most characters have something equivalent to this if they're fairly good in the mid-range of neutral. Think Cervantes 2K, Sofitio 1K, stuff like that, right? Rugi 1K, it's all somewhat comparable to this move. Now, with that said, this move also has a cancel. It has the mid. The thing with the mid cancel with no charge is it's fairly slow, and given that this is an unseeable low as it is, and this is a reactable cancel, the baseline cancel is kind of trash if you ask me. in that no one's going to go, oh man, he's doing the low. Oh, it's the mid, right? You're not going to have the time to react. It's either going to be, oh, I'm blocking low. I see that cancel. I stand up into it. Which leads me to my next, or the next move in this list, which is 1K hold. Now, there is no half charge option. It just either, well, there is, but it just remains low. And so it becomes an even more reactable low. Meaning you don't actually want to, I guess, half charge it. You only want to commit to the charge. This charge is very slow, and it's a low mid. All you have to do is block the low, and you can see there special mid, so you can just remain down. And the cancel on it, again, incredibly reactable if you know what you're looking for. Even in the early, like day 1, day 2 of Hwang, I was already blocking this online. So I don't see why this is a thing. It might be RE safe, but even then, I feel like there's just better options. So this low and this cancel, yeah, it's not. It's going to be a knowledge check at best. I don't see why you would ever go for it in the future. So 1K is fine. It's a very generic poke low. It is an approaching low, which you can see here. So that does sort of allow him to close the gap a little bit if he so desires. Keep in mind though that Hwang's frames on hit aren't that great. Like I said, like we're talking a lot of 0 to +4, very little +6, and basically no +8. So he is not one to just sort of stay in your face, mashing around. That's just he's not able to do that. Now another low that people, or another really good low, pardon me, is 1B. The reason why this low is fairly good is it's very fast. It is a distinct animation, but it is still unreactable. Yes, it's linear, but what's really cool about it is on counter hit, it actually leads to follow-up. Now again, I'm not gonna know, I don't know the optimal, but the point is, you know, you can get something here. Whatever that is, again, I'm not too sure, but that's just really neat, and I'm sure stuff will come out of that. So it's fairly good chunky damage on a counter hit. Just keep in mind it is relatively linear. Now the last low that he has worth talking about is 4-4A. Now this is used in conjunction with 4-4B. So this is 4-4B, a very good move, by the way. Very chunky, very fast. I'm pretty sure it is... Yeah, really good guard damage. Look at that, 15% guard damage. I believe it's -10 on block, but basically nobody can punish it. Geralt can, and X can't unless we are right at the wall in riggage and he's standing right on me and I can get crouch throw. But other than that, only Geralt can get the punish. But it's used in conjunction. I mean, it's a great move on its own, but it's used in conjunction with 4-4A, which is this move here. Now this move is, again, slower than you might think it is. It's safe, if I remember correctly, it's safe, but it's a very chunky low. Now I'm seeing Hwang's use this like it's frickin', like it's a god move. It's not. This shit is reactable. This move is going to have such a short lifespan in Hwang's existence, if you will. It's baffling, and it doesn't tech crouch until super late. It's very reactable. GI, jump it, auto GI it, etc. So 1A will be used for your tech crouch. I just don't see, again, I don't see 4-4A really standing the test of time at all. Like, it's great range, but it's not really gonna last. Okay. So I wanted to go over his lows because I'm seeing people use them a lot, and so again, like the passive, I wanted to spend a little extra time on them. Now, regarding his, I want to touch on his combo damage once more. It is associated with the talisman, so he does have to commit 1 to 2 talismans or 1+ bar to do that. He does have a couple safe launchers, in particular 2-2A+B sticks out. The tracking on it is a little wonky, but I'm sure that'll be adjusted in a future update. It does convert into CE or either 6BK, or pardon me, 66BK. Which you can see there is 59 damage, or you can even opt to do, right, 72 if you want to use another talisman, which is really good damage off of a safe launcher, or you can opt to go for stance pressure, which is what I'll talk about after. So his stance game is another one of those, like his 4-4A and his 1K hold. It's a system that is not going to stand the test of time in terms of just raw use on block. Now, let me elaborate on that note. So when Hwang uses a couple of particular moves and transitions, he actually gets a free hit on counter hit, which is, or just on hit in some cases, which is really strong. So for example, 6-6A hold, that's 6-6A, okay, fairly good range, high horizontal, right? Now if you hold it, you go into Yin Yang Talisman stance, or YYT for short, A, boom, 58 damage. Like, wow, you know, it makes you really not want to step. And that's what his whole shtick is, you know. Now, the catch with this move and the balance behind this move, if you notice the number at the top left corner, it goes from 4 to 2. So it costs him 2 talismans to commit to this. And if he's wrong and it doesn't counter hit, you'll see no combo. And so the interesting thing about this is it's really hard to confirm whether or not this will counter hit, because notice that it's a spinny sort of stun animation no matter what. Okay, so that's regular hit, and that's the other hit. So what you're looking for is either the counter word above Hwang's head on the left, or you're looking for this flash of blue light, if you see that, right? Here, let me take the guard off. Okay, and if you take counter off, no blue light, no word. So this is actually very difficult to properly hit confirm, or rather counter hit confirm. So that's one option. The other thing would be Y Rising B. So Y Rising B hold on hit gives the YTTB. Again, fairly chunky damage off of a half decent Y Rising move, but on hit, the other options just completely whiff, as you can see there. And on block, they're awful. So you have to commit to this. Like this transition is awful. I can 3B him here with basically any character. So those two moves stick out in particular as decent transitions. The thing with his stances are many characters have very unique interactions and unique counterplay to them. Some characters have to step GI one way, some characters can step GI the other way, some characters can't step GI at all, some characters can do actually a kick cancel and crouch block, avoid the whole thing, some characters like Talim only have to backstep, some characters like Yoshi only have to crouch block. Like, there's so many unique interactions with these stances, and I'm talking on hit, by the way. Okay, on hit, both of these stances have very clear, I don't want to use the word easy, but it's very clear counterplay as a defender, and with a little bit of practice, you're going to see people really exploit Hwang players who try to abuse these stance transitions on hit or block. Most notably moves like 6A plus B hold, right? Maybe even AA hold, 6-6B4, oops, like that, 6BA4, right? These transitions, you're gonna see these a fair bit, right? And just know, like, I'm not gonna get into it in this video, otherwise it'll take a really long time. Just know that these stances have very clear counterplay. Now, what the Hwang can do is, if he really wants to troll around and say, alright, you're gonna, step GI me, okay, well, I'm gonna go into this stance and I'm gonna, do something. The problem here is he's taking a massive risk going into either of these stances. Maybe not this one, not a massive risk, but he's throwing away the stance pressure, if you will. And same thing from here. He's taking a huge risk by going into these stances compared to just letting it rip. So it's kind of the risk reward just isn't there for Hwang to go into these other two stances outside of Soul Charge. And so I don't see how. We'll see how it goes, but I think you'll see very quickly that Hwangs are going to start to avoid these stances quite, regularly. Play him more as a neutral character with good buttons, good range, good movement, look for whiff punishes and only use those transitions sort of sometimes, or when they have a surplus of life force, or maybe even as a knowledge check as well in the future. But it will not be a mechanic that you can just, you know, you can't just play Yu-Gi-Oh with the opponent. You know, you have to be careful with those. The last thing with Hwang, the last couple of points with Hwang, his post-GI game is fairly good. By fairly good, I mean, you know, his A plus B is serviceable. It's not great, but it gets the job done. But the cool thing is he has this move, which is a with GI lethal hit. So he is a character with a mix-up, if you will, on post GI, which is pretty nice. And other than that, his wall game is standard damage. He has to commit 1 to 2 life force, or 1 to 2 life force for those combos. His guard damage is fairly good. He has multiple moves that deal guard damage on it, which is fairly interesting. In particular, you'll see moves like this one. You can see there I actually hit the Hwang, but his guard goes up by 15. This is really, really interesting, and some combos even convert into this just for that 15%. So his guard crush game is very good. So that's going to be a really neat selling point of this character. Last thing I'm going to mention is his soul charge. So his soul charge is very interesting in that he gains a relatively cheap, so 39 damage off of an unseeable low. So not as threatening as something like, say, a Muscle Buster, or like, Aswell Axlo, or Mitsurugi 1KB, or Setsuka 1AAAA in soul charge. Not quite that much damage, but it is fairly good, and it makes this low even better than it already was. So that's really interesting. The other really neat thing about his soul charge, in my opinion, is that he can just directly go into Flames of Justice or Divine Wind. And the reason why this is really cool is Divine Wind Divine Wind A becomes break attack. It's a horizontal mid break attack with, follow-ups on hit. So the reason why this is really cool is it gives Hwang a really awesome low tech jump, and the ability to sort of close the gap whenever he sees fit. So it's a very interesting soul charge. I think it might even be, dare I say, a little over-tuned. But, the time will tell on that one. That I'm not confident in saying that yet, but I do think it is one of the better soul charges in the game. And just as I got that lethal hit, I did forget to talk about his lethal hit game, so I'll just quickly mention that. His lethal hit game is a little wacky. A lot of his conditions require, or a lot of his lethal hits rather, require very interesting conditions. Think sort of Tira or Shanghua in terms of their accessibility, in that they got maybe 1 to 2 that you can use quite often, but then the rest are going to be very situational or very specific. And so if you go through them, you'll see a lot of them have to do with life force levels being above this, below this, or on this. And then he has one whiff punish one, block punish one here, but life force has to be higher. This is his post GI, but only when his life force is 1 or higher. Then he has lethal hits associated with his auras. And so it just overall, he has very specific conditions. And so learning them as the defender will take quite a bit of time, frankly. And then it's just a matter of keeping an eye out for these particular moves. None of them are moves that he's necessarily going to abuse, with a couple exceptions. So particularly his back throw getting a lethal hit. This is important to pay attention to, but it is only once per match. So, it's not that bad. Yin Yang Talisman K getting a lethal hit is when you have full soul gauge, which is 2 soul gauges, so just don't be at 2 bars against Hwang. And then the only other one to keep an eye out for is this one here, is 4 AAV, which is a low I didn't talk about because I don't think it's that good for the risk, but that might just be me. And this lethal hit is when his life force is -6 or lower, which means -6, 7, 8, or 9. So this is like a late game or a round 5 lethal hit that you have to pay attention to. This low, by the way, you might see it used a lot. It is 18 damage for an incredibly risky move. So risky. And this B isn't even a natural hit other than counter, so I don't value it. Some Hwangs might, but in my opinion, it's not worth the risk. So there you have it. That's my early thoughts on Hwang. I think he is a very solid character. If you told me to put him in my tier list right now, I would say he's on the higher end of A tier, meaning top of the middle of the pack. So he's what we call a high mid tier, or a low high tier, depending on how I would build it and how you scale it. I think he'll be very solid in competitive play, in casual play. I think he's very interesting and cool for most players. Personally, he's not my shtick, but he does have a lot of flair and swagger that you actually use in his combos, and so that can keep people interested in playing this character in general. He also has a fairly good matchup chart. I don't see this character having that many bad matchups, and the reason why is even if you can outrange this character, he still has whip punishment tools that you have to respect. So say Ivy, Nightmare, Siegfried, characters like that, he can do this, right? Spider-Man you, and notice this is 15% guard crush on hit, right? He's got this, right? You got this, backswing blow. Right? He has tools to challenge you if you're just going to run away. And so in that sense, he is very capable of playing at all ranges. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you disagree, or if you're having fun with Hwang, or if you haven't picked him up yet. I do suggest you do. I think he's a lot of fun. And yeah, see you on the next one. Have a good rest of your day.